So in a tale as old as time, I was right. Listen, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I bet 1,000 on my theories. I'm definitely wrong some of the time, if not most of the time. But in the wise words of Michael Scott / Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And let's just say I put up a good amount of shots. Now, I'm not just gonna sit here and say that I throw 1,000 theories at the wall and hope one stick, because I actually do put a lot of work into understanding and formulating theories. And this is just the most recent one that's paid off correctly. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about a theory I've had about Chainsaw Man for a good amount of time. One that I've actually documented. See, because obviously I could sit here and be like, oh, the theory I had that I never told you I was correct about. But nope. There's real, hard, undeniable evidence that I had this theory months ago. So what is the theory? What anime or manga are we even talking about in the first place? Well, today we're talking about Chainsaw Man, specifically chapter 146 of Chainsaw Man. Because for the first time in what feels like forever, there are big things happening in Chainsaw Man, and they're big things that I predicted. Most notably that the Death Devil is coming to Chainsaw Man, and she's the biggest bad. Yes, that's right. 4 months ago, I predicted in my video ranking and explaining all the primal devils that the Darkness Devil was most likely not only a primal devil, but was also going to be the final baddie of Chainsaw Man. And wouldn't you know it, chapter 146 proved me to be 100% right. But with the coming of this news, there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot more to do than just pat myself on the back and self-congratulation. Because here's the thing, the last 3-ish months haven't been great for Chainsaw Man. Part 2 of Chainsaw Man is fun, though I would say not as fun as part 1. However, with the coming of chapter 146, it appears as though that all the buildup we've been doing since the beginning of part 2 is beginning to pay off, because chapter 146 did a whole lot more than just tell us that the Death Devil is on the way, which is why today we're going to do a slight refresher course in everything that's going on in the Chainsaw manga, cover some of our bases, and theorize about what's coming in the future. That is to say, in simpler terms, I want to cover the events of the last couple of chapters of Chainsaw Man, get everybody up to speed, and then make some theories about where I believe the Chainsaw Man manga is going. Because not only has the Chainsaw Man Devil arc been kind of boring, but it's also been kind of confusing. But considering the fact that we're heading into what will most likely be the most hectic arc in Chainsaw Man's history, we should not only think about where we've come from, but also start to think about where we're going. And considering the fact that I was the one who called this 4 months ago, I might be the guy to listen to in that regard. But before we get to explaining or theorizing about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to hear me explain or theorize about any of your favorite anime, guys, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to look like you have anime theories worth listening to, go ahead and head over to my brand new anime merch store, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime sweatshirts, t-shirts, and sticker packs known to man. But before we get into all that, guys, today we're going to talk about a brand new sponsor to the page, Dungeon Hunter 6. Listen, we all know I love a good franchise, and to me, there's no better mobile game franchise out there than Dungeon Hunter. And Dungeon Hunter just released the newest addition to its franchise with Dungeon Hunter 6. See, Dungeon Hunter 6 is a free-to-play mobile ARPG. It gives you fast-paced hack-and-slash combat with different skills and builds that you can use to customize the game to fit your unique playstyle, all for the low cost of absolutely free. Yes, that's right, you can download Dungeon Hunter 6 using either the link in my description or the QR code on the screen right now for free. But outside of the game being free, why would you download Dungeon Hunter 6? Well, how many games out there allow you to use the bosses you defeat? The answer is not a lot, but Dungeon Hunter 6 is one of them. See, Dungeon Hunter understands that the last time that you see a boss shouldn't be when you defeat it, because outside of being able to loot that boss you just defeated, Dungeon Hunter gives you some other abilities, like being able to ride or fly on that boss, or summon it to help you in future battles. But you're not able to just summon one boss. No, in fact, you're able to summon up to 3 at once, and these bosses can follow you or perform perfect combos with you. And in the late game of Dungeon Hunter 6, you can even transform into these bosses. And considering the fact that there is over 100 bosses in this game, you can have a team perfectly tailored to you. But the creativity doesn't end there, because there's also a lot of creativity in the gameplay. Since there's vastly varying skill trees and builds, you can tackle missions in a way specifically unique to you. If you're granted a stealth mission, you could transform into a cat to make sure that no nobody detects you. But then again, you could also summon a couple of dragons and blaze your way through it. But speaking of traveling throughout the game, Dungeon Hunter also makes sure that you travel in style, as there's a customizable mount system that allows you to either ride futuristic mechanisms or fantasy creatures that are customized by you to make sure that you're the only one riding it. And you'll be able to show off these customizable mounts in stunning 3D graphics, as Dungeon Hunter 6 is by far and away one of the greatest looking mobile games on the market right now, which gives the game a fantastic visual experience in stunning combat. But outside of customization, beautiful combat, and making bosses work for you, Dungeon Hunter also has guilds that you can join and go on guild raids with, a variety of skill tree options that allow you to build a character that plays the way you want them to, and an auction house that allows you to buy and sell items with other players in the universe so you can make sure you have the best loot possible. So what are you guys waiting for? Download Dungeon Hunter 6 today for free by either scanning the QR code on the screen right now or by following the link in my description. If you do either of those things, you'll get a starting pack worth $50 with 10 summoning scrolls, 1 SSR Lieutenant Demonic Wolf, and 1 accessory pack. You can also use your account to enter the launch Lucky Spin event for a free chance to win prizes like an iPhone 15 Pro Max, a PS5, or an Apple Watch. Check out my description for the details. So what are you guys waiting for? A gripping fantasy world awaits you. So, Chainsaw Man's been a little slow recently, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. It's just a pretty major tonal shift for the manga. I mean, the entirety of part 1 just seems to be Denji ripping through people with chainsaws, and part 2 is a whole lot less of that. Now, it's partially because Denji in part 2 kind of shares the spotlight as a main character with the introduction of Asa. And don't get me twisted, I love Asa, but she's no Denji. On top of that, surprisingly, there's also been a large amount of political world building going on in part 2. And while part 1 of Chainsaw Man is kind of a study about Denji making his way in the public safety division, part 2 seems to be a story about Denji trying to make his way as a regular boy, while the world around him becomes obsessed with the devil that he can turn into. So ironically, while Denji is taking a step away from the spotlight in the manga, he's being put into the spotlight, which is kind of an interesting ebb and flow. See, because nobody knew who Denji was in part 1, but in part 1, we stuck pretty much exclusively with Denji. However, in part 2, when the entire world becomes obsessed with Denji, Chainsaw Man, we are getting less and less Denji, and when we get Denji, he's not even turning into Chainsaw Man anymore because the public safety division wants him to just go to school and be a regular boy, which led to part 2 being slightly slower than part 1. Once again, nothing wrong with that. The way that the universe is being fleshed out is fun and interesting. And let's not sit here and act like Denji didn't battle against the primal falling devil with a chainsaw motorcycle. There definitely has been action in part 2. But with the coming of chapter 146, there's now definitely action, and there's pretty much a guarantee that action is going to stick around. See, because in the last 3 to 4 chapters, a bunch of new things have been revealed. And one of the most important things that's been revealed is the unveiling of Special Division 7, which is obviously a replacement for the Special Division that Aki, Makima, Power, the Violence Fiend, and so on and so forth used to make up. However, since the majority of that Special Division is now dead, the public safety division had to find new devils and fiends to smash together in a special division, and devil contract users. This new special division was kind of introduced in chapter 143. Now, this special division, so far as we currently know, is composed of 5 members. Hirofumi Ishida, also known as the guy with the octopus contract, who's been following Denji around for the entirety of part 2, being like, be a regular guy. Fumiko Mifune, who's the girl who brought Denji to karaoke to have sex with him, but then ended up just having him fight a bunch of dudes with baseball bats. Guangxi, also known as the crossbow hybrid, who was the first devil hunter and comes from China. A fiend who's either the nail fiend or the hammer fiend, we're not entirely sure yet. They just got introduced to the story. And then, maybe most notably, Katana Man. Now, Quan Chi and Katana Man being introduced as Special Division members isn't the craziest thing of all time, as obviously all of the hybrids were used by Makima in her battle against Chainsaw Man / Denji, so they've had a somewhat tangential relationship with the Public Safety Division for a little bit. But the reason that Special Division 7 was introduced in the first place is that the Chainsaw Man Church planned on using 3 other hybrids, that being the Broadsword Hybrid, the Whip Hybrid, and the Spear Hybrid, to essentially attack a shopping mall and just kill a bunch of women and children. However, before these 3 hybrids were able to launch their terroristic scheme, Quan Chi killed all of them. Because if we remember correctly, you can't really kill a hybrid. Remember when being a hybrid was rare? There's 5 others that aren't Denji, and those are just the ones in Japan. Now, the reason that we know that these 3 hybrids were sent in to launch a terroristic attack against this mall is because the second in command for the Chainsaw Man Church, Bayram Bridge, sits down with Denji and Fumiko and tells them how he believes there's going to be a devil attack in the building they're currently in. This, unfortunately, is really the only evidence we have to connect the hybrids to the Chainsaw Man Church, but it feels like enough evidence for me. Like, otherwise, how would Bayram know? However, because Quan Chi cutting down the 3 hybrids created such a mess, the news actually took the event and misconstrued it to make it sound as though the Chainsaw Man Church was responsible for shooting up a mall. And they did this so the Public Safety Division would have an opportunity to raid all Chainsaw Man churches. And so they did that. And that's where Special Division 7 is introduced, because they're the people who do the raids in Japan. Well, at least they're the people who do the raids on, like, the big headquarters. And so the Public Safety Division is able to seize most of the Chainsaw Man churches in Japan. And that's actually important, because these raids are only launched in Japan. At least that's all we see. However, Chainsaw Man's influence has gone global. On top of this, since Asa is the golden girl of the Chainsaw Man Church, Special Division 7 is also after her. But the Public Safety Division doesn't necessarily want Asa dead. In fact, the Public Safety Division was hoping that Asa would get close enough to Denji that she would be able to claim him as hers. And therefore, they were hoping that Asa would be able to turn Denji into a weapon. As we know that Asa is able to turn the things that she owns into weapons, and that the more guilty she feels about turning it into a weapon, the stronger the weapon. And somewhat crazily, that's exactly what the Public Safety Division wanted. They not only wanted Asa to use a high-quality ingredient like Denji for a weapon, but they also knew that she would feel incredibly guilty about it, and therefore this weapon would probably make her stronger than Chainsaw Man. However, unfortunately, both Asa and Denji are so on the spectrum that it just didn't work out like that. However, that's not revealed until chapter 146. I actually want to move back for a second, because the first real big thing that happens in the last couple of chapters happened in chapter 144, when it was revealed to all of us that the secondary devil that Denji fought in his battle against the falling devil, you know, the giant devil that had a huge hole in its chest, was actually the Justice Devil. Now, when Denji was fighting against this devil, nobody knew what devil it was. Nobody in universe, and not us, the reader. It just kind of popped up, and nobody was like, oh no, the blank devil. It was just a huge, terrifying looking devil that Denji cut down. However, in chapter 144, the Public Safety Division's devil identifier is looking at the corpse and comes to the conclusion that this devil is the Justice Devil. Now, that's kind of a problem. See, because for the entirety of part 2, we've been dealing with what we thought was the Justice Devil, as the Justice Devil and the contracts that it makes with all of the people throughout part 2 has reared its ugly head multiple times. See, so far as we understood, in part 2 of Chainsaw Man, multiple people have made contracts with the Justice Devil, and because they made contracts with the Justice Devil, they were able to take grotesque, powerful forms in order to dole out the justice that they believed they were due. However, even after Denji is cut down, the hole in the chest devil, or what we now understand to be the Justice Devil, people continued to use the Justice Devil's abilities. However, if the Justice Devil was cut down and sent to hell, all contracts with it should be nullified, which made the Public Safety Division come to the conclusion that the contracts that were made weren't made with the Justice Devil. In fact, in chapter 145, the leader of the Chainsaw Man Church transforms into a grotesque monster in a battle against Special Division 7. And he states that the reason that he's able to do this in the first place is because of the contract he has with the Justice Devil. And this has kind of been the pitch for the Chainsaw Man Church in the first place. You have a contract with an incredibly powerful devil that's going to allow us to rise above everybody else in terms of strength. And that devil is the Justice Devil. But as to who these contracts are made with, if not the Justice Devil, we don't actually learn until chapter 146, and it's one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, that's happened in part 2 of Chainsaw Man. See, it's revealed to us when Bayram, the second in command in the Chainsaw Man Church, is having a conversation with Denji and Fumika and Naoto that the devil that all of the followers of the Chainsaw Man Church were making contracts with wasn't the Justice Devil, but instead the Fire Devil. And the ability of the Fire Devil is that after you make a contract with the Fire Devil, it allows you to take whatever form you want. Now, as to whether or not that's an ability that has anything to do with fire, not really. But then again, is it an ability that has anything to do with justice? I could make an equally half-hearted explanation about how it has something to do with fire as I could with it having to do anything with justice. Like, the heat from fire can be used to shape objects into any form you want, and the Justice Devil allows you to take on whatever form you need in order to dole out justice. Equally nonsensical explanations for both fire and justice. It's Chainsaw Man. don't inject logic. But Barham reveals that he was only lying to the Chainsaw Man Church followers about the devil they were making a contract with, because Barham and the Chainsaw Man Church were incredibly open about the fact that they were making a contract with the devil that would allow them to take on whatever form they wanted. It's just, instead of revealing that it was the Fire Devil, they said it was the Justice Devil. And so, as all of the Chainsaw Man churches are being raided by the Public Safety Division, every Chainsaw Man Church member on Earth either activates or is forcibly activated into their form change. See, we don't really know why the change was activated. However, we do know that every single Chainsaw Man Church follower on Earth activated their form change simultaneously, and that form change activation just so happened to be when all of the Chainsaw Man churches were raided. Now, if you were a vehement follower of Chainsaw Man and joined the Chainsaw Man Church, what's the form you would probably want to take on? A tentacle monster? That's a weird answer, and it's also not what anybody from the Chainsaw Man Church answered. Why would you say that? It's just tells me a lot about you. Well, everybody in the Chainsaw Man Church, unsurprisingly, decided to turn into Chainsaw Man. Yes, that's right. Every single one of the 350,000 members of the Chainsaw Man Church grew chainsaws out of their hands and out of their foreheads. I mean, that makes sense, right? They're all vehement followers of the Chainsaw Man Church, and they all want to be Chainsaw Man. So it would stand to reason that after making a contract with the devil that allowed them to take on whatever form they wanted, they would all turn into Chainsaw Man. Now, the Fire Devil also has a separate ability, outside of allowing people to take on whatever form they want. See, very befitting of the Fire Devil, the more contracts that the Fire Devil makes with people, the stronger that the forms that they're able to undergo become. That is to say that the more people who undergo a transformation under the power of the Fire Devil, the stronger that those transformations are. Think of it kind of like a fire. A small bushfire isn't that hot, but a forest fire is incredibly hot. So now, since there is 350,000 people contracted to the Fire Devil, these Chainsaw Man transformations are actually very powerful. So where did all of these contracts come, and why did they all pop up simultaneously? Well, like I said earlier, we don't really know for sure what activated all of these transformations. It might have been the sight of fire, it might have been the fact that the Chainsaw Man churches were raided, or it might have been set to a certain time. And the certain time thing is probably the most likely answer, because Fumiko asked Barham, but why is everybody undergoing these transformations now? To which Barham responds that at 5 o'clock today, we had large-scale weddings in all of our Chinese and Canadian chapters. As to why Fujimoto decided that China and Canada were going to be the places that really got Chainsaw Man fever, I genuinely don't know. Like, China I get because it's close to Japan, just Canada felt like such a weird answer. But part of these mass weddings is that on top of being wed, you are also contracted to the Justice Devil. If you'll remember correctly, when Denji was recruited into the Chainsaw Man Church, they tried to get him married immediately. And it was through the medium of these marriages that they were getting a ton of people contracted to the Fire Devil. And because the Chinese and Canadian chapters had mass weddings on the day that they knew all the Chainsaw Man churches were going to be raided, they were able to get the amount of people that had contracts with the Fire Devil up to 350,000. And considering the fact that Fumiko asked the question, why now, and Barham answered with, we had a bunch of people get married today because we knew there was going to be raids, I have to believe that a part of the clause with the Fire Devil is that at a certain time, everybody's going to undergo their transformations. And undergo a specific transformation. Because Barham admits that people who have undergone the transformation prior to today have all had slightly beastly transformations. Whether it be Asa's friend or the Chainsaw Man Church leader, people who have made contracts with the Justice Devil and undergone their transformations have turned into what appeared to be devils, while the 350 people who underwent a transformation simultaneously get turned into Chainsaw Man. They, however, unlike Chainsaw Man, they don't hold on to their humanity, at least by and large. As Barham states, that the number of people contracted to the Fire Devil makes all of the people undergoing these transformations stronger. However, the strength of their transformation is too much for the majority of the people undergoing the transformation. And therefore, the majority of the 350,000 people who underwent this transformation have lost control, meaning that essentially they've lost their humanity and just become devils. So just out of nowhere, there's 350,000 new devils, which is not great. So why did Barham and the Chainsaw Man Church do this in the first place? Well, actually, for altruistic reasons, which is a wild thing to say out loud. And this has got to be one of my favorite plot twists in recent manga history. See, the reason that the Chainsaw Man Church decided to transform 350,000 people into Chainsaw Man devils is because of how devil power works in the Chainsaw Man universe. See, the Chainsaw Man Church is making a massive gamble on two people, Asa and Denji. See, Asa is currently sharing a body with the War Devil, and Denji is very obviously Chainsaw Man. And therefore, the Chainsaw Man Church and Famine, the Famine Devil, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, decided to cast the entirety of human society into a downward spiral so that everybody on Earth would become afraid of two things: war and Chainsaw Man, as humanity is now launched into a war with 350,000 chainsaw men and women. Chainsaw people. Inclusion is important in devil-based genocide, and because of how devil power works in the Chainsaw Man universe, the more fear that's garnered towards war and Chainsaw Man, the stronger that Denji and Asa will get. And in 6 months' time, the King of Terror, also known as the Death Devil, will descend upon humanity and wipe them off the globe. And therefore, the Famine Devil, who's only doing this because if all humans die, human food will disappear, and the Chainsaw Man Church are starting a war against humanity to make Asa and Denji strong enough to kill the Death Devil, which is sort of what I predicted 4 months ago. Listen, I said in part 2 we were going to meet the Death Devil. Now, the Death Devil was going to be the biggest and the baddest out of all of the devils we'd ever seen, and that the Death Devil was going to be the final baddie of part 2, and possibly Chainsaw Man as a whole, because there is no fear bigger to humanity than death, as the reason that we're inherently afraid of everything is the possibility of that thing resulting in our death. We are afraid of the dark because the things that came to kill us came from the dark. We're afraid of falling because at the end of the fall, there comes death. And considering the fact that darkness and falling were two primal fears, but the reason that we're afraid of those two things is death, then I made the very logical conclusion that death should also be a primal devil, and the strongest out of all of the primal devils. And that was almost word for word confirmed by Nayuta. As she said, the Death Devil is the super duper strongest devil with the most feared name in existence, which doesn't necessarily confirm my idea that the Death Devil is a primal devil, but it does confirm that the Death Devil is the strongest out of all of the devils and is the final baddie to at least part 2. Now, we've known about the existence of the Death Devil for a good amount of time, ever since Makima was explaining how Pochita's devil erasure abilities worked, and how only the four horsemen were able to remember the concepts that Pochita had erased. And the four horsemen devil are control, famine, war, and death. Now, it was revealed by Nayuta that death is the oldest sister of the four, and it appears that all four are women, which actually unfortunately makes a lot of sense for Fujimoto. He loves it when women are mean to him. I swear him writing manga is just like him venting about how much he wants a woman to be mean to him. Like, of course, the most cynical and four terrifying entities in the entire universe would be women. Which, you know what? Like, honestly, I'm here for it. Women can be evil too. Maybe not the inclusion we were looking for, but we'll take it. But this means that more likely than not, the ending of Chainsaw Man is in sight. The real question is, okay, now that we understand what's going on in the Chainsaw manga, where are we heading from here? Obviously, a war has to be fought between humanity and the 350,000 Chainsaw Man devils, and that'll probably fall squarely into the lap of militaries and public safety divisions. As we know, people like the US military were the only people still willing to battle against Makima, so there's a fair amount of possibility that nations' militaries are very involved in this upcoming war against the Chainsaw Man devils. My thing is, though, I don't know how much time Fujimoto is going to focus on this war. Because here's the thing, a deep and long arc about this war would be kind of interesting, I guess. I mean, it would definitely be the right move to show how the world is burning down and the amount of fear that's being garnered towards the concepts of war and Chainsaw Man. But here's the thing, this war doesn't have that much appeal in terms of it being a long, drawn-out arc. Let me explain. Let's use Naruto as a comparison here because it has a very famous war arc. Imagine for a second that Naruto's war arc was just White Zetsu. Like, that's it. No Madara, no reincarnated shinobi, no Obito. Just the 100,000 White Zetsu versus the Shinobi Alliance. Now, that technically would be a pretty tough battle when you consider the fact that all of the White Zetsu were Jonin class enemies. However, unfortunately, that's kind of boring. Like, sure, we can get a couple of chapters of Denji battling against Chainsaw Man devils and hunting down Chainsaw Man devils to try and eradicate this scourge from the earth while trying to save as many lives as possible, all the while garnering more fear towards his concept. How many chapters can we do that? I mean, there's a reason that the clones had Jedi and the droids had Sith. Sure, cutting through fodder copy and paste enemies is fun, but only when you know there's a promise of a cool and different enemy at the end. But considering the fact that all of the people that were just turned into Chainsaw Man devils are just that, Chainsaw Man devils, and there currently no longer exists an actual enemy outside of these 350,000 Chainsaw Man devils, it's just kind of a swarm of copy and paste enemies. And while these copy and paste enemies already have cut down not only a ton of humans, but also public safety officers, people like Denji and Asa in Special Division 7 will treat them like the fodder that they are. So are we gonna get a 30, 40 chapter arc of Denji cutting down the same enemy over and over and over again? Probably not. But considering the fact that the Chainsaw Man Church is now kind of working collaboratively with not only the Public Safety Division, but also humanity as a whole, and the same could be said about Famine, as humanity, 3 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and the Chainsaw Man Church are all now being brought together under the idea of defeating a possible world-ending threat in the shape of the Death Devil. They're not going to fight each other. That'd be kind of pointless. I mean, in actuality, it never really appeared as though as any of these factions were ever going to battle against each other. As now Yuta, the Control Devil, is Denji's little sister now. Famine has been a very morally gray character for the entirety of Part 2, and the War Devil just kind of wants Chainsaw Man dead. In the meanwhile, the Chainsaw Man Church, while they are technically the people who started this war, only started the war so that they have a chance to defeat the thing that's coming in 6 months that would wipe out the entirety of humanity. So they're not really the bad guys, at least in my eyes. I mean, like, obviously, yeah, it's not great, but technically it is a plan that might work. All the meanwhile, the Public Safety Division, while they're probably not stoked about the war that they were just thrown into, would probably understand that this is a way to make sure that we don't all die. But the Public Safety Division, to me, is the outlier here. I believe that if Fujimoto is gonna do a long war arc type arc, the majority of the time this arc will be breaking down the political turmoil between the Public Safety Division and the Chainsaw Man Church. Or a new kind of intermediate enemy is gonna be introduced into the ranks of the Chainsaw Man Church. Something or somebody that breaks up the monotony of cutting down 350,000 of the same type of enemy. All culminating in a massive all-out brawl between the Death Devil, Asa, and Denji at the end of Chainsaw Man. So while it's crazy to say because the ending of Chainsaw Man didn't feel close until right about now, it appears as though the ending of Chainsaw Man is in sight, which is sad because honestly, Chainsaw Man feels as though like it's a manga that could just never end. I just want to read Fujimoto's insane scribbles for the rest of time. What did you guys think about this chapter? What do you think is going to come in the future of Chainsaw Man? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. I'd like to once again reiterate, I was right.